So today we are going to be going through a run of Veteran Frostvault. I will be explaining all of the mechanics, and hopefully we will do the mechanics and you guys can see how our group completes this dungeon. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is going to be a Veteran Frostvault guide. Here we go. Gonna start. We're just going to manually queue us in. I do highly recommend having a healer for this dungeon. This is one of the very few dungeons where I think you need a healer for. The reason why is because the final boss does a lot of damage. I don't think there's any way you can complete it without a healer unless you have some incredibly selfish tanky sets. So it's probably possible with 3 damage dealers. But I really do recommend a healer. It just makes everything go a lot smoother.
What may I ask?
Alright, so start out in this area of the dungeon. Have a few ad pulls before we get to the first boss. This first area is very goblin based. Currently running this with a Stamblade, a Magden, and a Templar healer. And our Magden has a thing for chickens. He's got like 6 of them. I am currently wearing Eben and Alkosh. This is because the healer will be providing Olarima and synergies for Alkosh. And Eben, I think, is the best group survivability set when you have a healer. It just helps people from getting one shot and survive a little bit better. In these initial ad pulls, these Cold Snap Ogres, they will fear you, and they have a heavy attack that hits quite a bit. So be really careful of that. Let's see if he does his fear mechanic. Nope. The rest of the ads are pretty vanilla. There are Harriers that will do a heavy attack with a bow that needs to be bashed because it does a shit ton of damage, but I don't know if they're actually in these initial pulls or not. Yep, there's a Harrier. So those Harriers, want to try and take them down first if you can, because they have, it's the bow ultimate, the other morph of Ballista where you just fire a shit ton of arrows at them. They have that ability. It can be bashed, but if it's on your damage dealers for more than a second or 2. There's that fear mechanic that I was talking about. Okay, we're coming up on the first boss. This first boss, the biggest thing about him is he will uppercut people up into the air, and then when that happens, he needs to be bashed afterwards because you can't break free from it. And he'll also spawn a ton of ads. Most of the ads can be chained in and rooted up, but he also spawns ice wraiths that can't be rooted, so be careful of those. Alright. Here we go. This will be my horn first. There's the uppercut. So you can just bash him right out of that. So there he uppercuts somebody else again, just bash him out. Make sure to watch your damage dealers in this fight, because those ads can really get on top of you. This is what happens if the boss dies in the middle of an uppercut. You just kind of slide around. I'll get up eventually. I hope. Okay, so then we have a little cutscene-esque thing here, where they talk about getting through this door. I believe it is over here. You can always follow this Ranja, this Khajiit. She'll lead you to the right door for you to go through. She'll open it up here in just a second, and we can go through. These Sky Splitters, they do a meteor attack, where it's just your standard meteor, just block and spread out from everyone else. They'll usually die before they cast it, but in case they don't, it doesn't do too much damage as long as you block it and you don't stack them. Frost Atronachs are pretty generic Frost Atronachs. I just take this one and pull them into the next room. The Toothbreakers are your heavy ads, so make sure that you taunt them. The Harriers, you can interrupt them with chains, so a lot of the times I'll wait until they start charging up and then I'll pull them in. That way I can interrupt their bow attack and don't have to worry about it. Okay, the second boss has a few mechanics. The biggest one is that there are going to be more of those archer guys that spawn, and they have to be chained in. Because if they don't go down, then they will just start nuking your group. He will also bola two people together, and so when that happens, you need to move away from each other. It's really similar to the effect in the second boss of Fungal Grotto 2. So just roll dodge away from each other, otherwise it'll do a shit ton of damage and kill you. At about 70%, he will do a shield phase, like the first boss in VMAL, where he'll throw his sword up in the air and then start shooting fire at everybody. Just damage him through it. It won't last very long, as long as you do damage the entire time. And he will also summon ice tornadoes at people. When that happens, move to the outside of the room and rotate clockwise. That way you won't run the tornadoes into each other, because if you touch them for even like a second or two, you'll die. He also will stand in the middle of the room and channel an ice tornado vortex thing that'll get progressively bigger, and so just make sure to stand on the outside of the room, because if you stand in it, you will die. Alright, here we go. This will be my horn first. And you will randomly target people with a heavy attack. It's not too bad, but if you can block through it, there are those archers I was talking about. He also jumps up in the air like that. He just comes right back down. It's really not a big deal. There's his shield phase, and so this part just damaged through it. There's an ice tornado. And so you see we're rotating clockwise around the room. Then we'll bring them back to the center here. And there we go, piece of cake. Nice work, guys.
Thank you.
This next boss that's coming up is definitely the most difficult boss in my opinion. So watch out for these lasers. They do a ton of damage and will be in this next boss fight. So this boss, he does a few different things. The first is that he will spawn ads. He spawns a Dwemer sphere and a Dwemer spider. When they come up, don't focus them unless you can't focus the boss. Because the boss will go invulnerable. He will drop down into this little Epcot bubble looking thing. And when that happens, you need to pay attention to where he is. I try to center him in the middle of the room. Because these lasers on the edge of the room, one of them will activate at a time. You see that there's 4 of them, and it will shoot a beam across the room and start moving from one edge to the other. And you need to block the beam with the Epcot bubble. I'm saying a lot. But anyways, so when he's doing that phase, just go and work on killing the ads. The ads do have an attack called Ricochet Wave. It is this great big steam red AoE that flies through the group. It'll target someone randomly. It doesn't respect taunt, and so it'll just randomly target somebody, and usually all 4 members of the group are stacked on top of each other. If you block it, it doesn't do that much damage and your healer can heal you through it. If you don't block it, then it gets really dicey. So be on the lookout for that. There will also be rolling bombs around the room. You can use the bombs to blow up the Dwemer spheres and spiders, but only the tank can survive the hit, and usually it doesn't line up super well, so I don't worry about it most of the time. Because it also will stun you and possibly get you killed from the lasers. This boss is really just about the lasers. As the boss goes on, more and more lasers will activate. So in the beginning there'll be 1, and then 2 to 4 later on. The boss will go down randomly. It's not percentage based, but the number of lasers that he spawns is percentage based. I'm not entirely sure what the percentages are. I believe it's higher than 75, and then 50 to 75, and then 30 to 50, and then below 30. All right. But let's go ahead and do this. All right, here we go. So he does that steam attack. It doesn't really do very much damage. If you're a DPS, just move out of it. If you're a tank, move out of it if you want. And so you see, I always look for where it's hitting the wall and then go to that side. Watch out for these rolling bombs on the ground. As a tank, you can survive them, but they will stun you, and so you might get led up with a heavy or something like that. This attack here, if you're a tank, you can stand in it. If you're a DPS, try and move out of it. You can probably survive 1 or 2, but it's better to not take the risk. Left. And so, as you can see, we move either left or right. And then once you move left one time, you'll keep moving left that entire time until he goes down and do it again. Myhorn. And so that's really helpful for when he gets into these end stages and he starts throwing out 3 to 4 lasers. Because then once you go left once, you'll know you'll always go left. And so, left. And so now we know after this laser passes, we can go left again. Left. Left. left, 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 and we're good. Nice work, guys. So like I said, that's the most difficult boss in here. If you can beat him, you can beat the rest of the dungeon pretty easy. Alright, so then after you finish that boss, you go back out through this door, back to the original kind of plaza area, and then again, look for the Khajiit, and she will guide you to the next room.
We have your parts. I hope they are worth decimating the local goblin population.
She's over here.
The articulators are completely seized up.
Wait for the door to open, and you go through.
But I might not have. If I can channel
So starting in this next part, there are going to be Arquebus ads. There are these Dwemer spheres. They will shoot a big AoE on people that needs to be interrupted. It's not too bad, just interrupt it. It's kind of like a comet if it doesn't, so just watch out. They die pretty easily. And then he does the same attack that a lot of the Centurions do, where he shoots all the lightning balls up in the air and they land on you. Again, as a tank, you can survive it. As a DPS, just kite out of it. So that attack over there that's on Kumba, that's the Sky Splitter meteor. You see he just moved out of group, blocked it, and all is good. Okay, for this next boss, there are going to be two of them. There's going to be the Goblin Rizek, and then there's going to be his Atronach Avalanche. As a tank, your job is to hold Avalanche and Rizek both, because Rizek, despite being a mage, will actually move into melee range with you, and so just taunt them both. But really, you just need to worry about Avalanche, because Avalanche has a few attacks that are really important. The most important one is that he will lock you in a cage, and if you move out of the cage, you'll die. And he will start swinging his fist around, and there will be sections that will be clear of AoE, and you as a tank need to move into those sections. If you get hit by two of them, you'll die. The Rizuk, the goblin, he will teleport around the room. And usually after he teleports, you need to bash him, otherwise he will start shooting ice shards at everybody. And then he will also cast an ability. You'll get a notification on your screen that says Rizuk is chilling the air. When you see that, you need to make sure to spread out and block, because it'll be a meteor that'll go on you. Except for instead of being able to move around the entire time, you'll be frozen in place and then the meteor will drop on you. If you're by yourself, no big deal. You'll just survive it, no problem. But if you're stacked on top of somebody, it'll kill you. You only need to kill Rizuk. Once Rizuk dies, Avalanche dies. And so just focus all your DPS on him. And yeah, that's about it. This boss is all on the tank to not die to Avalanche. Alright, Phil, just let me know when you're ready. Alright, here we go. My horn. Here's the attack that I was talking about, where you have to move into the sections. I like to just stand in the middle. That way it's easier to move to the correct area. There's the ice charge. Oh, he will also summon those ice vortexes around the room. Don't worry too much about him. Just don't stand at the edge of the room. It does put a little bit of a DPS check on this boss, but it's not too bad. See? Piece of cake. And just follow this back out into the main plaza. And we will get ready for the final boss.
We have your conveyors. It only took murdering every goblin in this place.
Enough, Landau. You had your chance. It's working. Everyone away from the door.
After the door is open, you can follow it in. It leads us to the final boss, Stonekeeper. Before we fight him, we have to do a few things. The first one is this first wave of ads. These Centurions at this part have a heavy attack that does a lot of damage. And I thought I taunted him. It can be roll dodged, but it's pretty dangerous to roll dodge it, so I only roll dodge it unless you have to. But it can be. Just keep that in mind. These are the same arquebuses as before, the ones that cast the big canister attack. There it is. So we get these waves of ads. See how much damage that heavy did to me. That was through block and shield. Which doesn't seem like a big deal now, but those ads will spawn during the final boss as well. And that's when it can really become a problem. Okay, so now before you start the boss, you have to do the skeever portion. This is to make sure that when you do the skeever portion on the final boss, you know what you're doing. You'll go into the skeevers with these. Go on down. And then you have 4 abilities as a skeever. One of them is to charge your ultimate. That is your first ability. And so you see you go up to this pylon, you charge it up, and then you turn around and go follow the path behind you. Your second ability, your 2, is a resurrection ability. It is an AoE res, and it'll res everyone around you in an area. It has a super long cooldown. You can usually only use it once. And then your 3 is a speed up, and your 4 is a heal. And then your ultimate you use once you reach the end of the line, and it'll disconnect your shock conveyor. Once all 4 shock conveyors are connected, you'll get sent back up. And now that we have that part done, it is time to head into the final boss. The final boss will spawn right away, and so I'll do my best to explain him quickly. He doesn't have that many mechanics. He will do the skeever thing again at 50%, and you will kill his arms first. Kill the blade arm first. It does more damage than the flame arm does, as they kill the flame arm first. It doesn't really matter which one you kill first, but after an arm dies, they will spawn a centurion, and so then make sure to kill the centurion as soon as you can. As a tank, you need to taunt both of the arms and the Stonekeeper boss. The Stonekeeper has his Ablative Fallout ability, which is the laser beam that he's shooting at me. That will do more damage the longer he has it casted. And so it kind of puts a bit of a DPS check on this boss, but it's more of a tank check to survive long enough. And then once you take off both of the arms, he will start doing his armpit fire and then start rotating a certain direction. There will also be the rolling bombs that were from earlier in the fight, or from the third boss, I mean. And so just kind of kite him around, and then he'll go back to doing this. And then at 50%, he will spawn his arms back, and will go back down into the skeevers. So remember to charge your ultimate, and then follow the path. The difference this time, though, is that there are traps. And so you want to make sure to be really careful. The blade traps are pretty easy. Just wait for them to go down, then go through. The difficult ones are in hallways like this. There's going to be fire. So you want to wait for the fire to come down, and then use your speed boost to get through it. Get to the end, and use your ultimate to disable the shock conveyor. And then you can go back into the middle, or you can just hang out. Going back into the middle is if you don't trust your teammates, and hanging out is if you do. And then it's just the same exact part from earlier. He will now shoot fire, and there will be blade traps like the second round of Maelstrom Arena. Otherwise, it's the exact same fight. After he spawns that, he'll spawn the Centurion. You see I roll dodged it there. I was getting kind of low on health and didn't have a shield, so I didn't want to take the risk. Here's the armpit fire again. And there it is. You have now completed Frostvault. Alright, and thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that this was informative. If you have any questions about the mechanics, be sure to let me know. Obviously, this wasn't hard mode. If you want a hard mode video, please comment down below, and we'll see if there's enough interest for that. Otherwise, enjoy your Frostvault farming.